There we go. You're on.
Okay guys, so when you do your inlay, your piece needs to be completely soldered. All the seams, you can't see any like air holes when you hold it up to the light in between your seam. Here's a nice illustration that this seam needs to be all the way around. And
show it for the camera.
Okay, so when you're filling your piece, as I will demonstrate, you want to overflow it a little bit so it has enough, because when it's drying it kind of goes into a cave a little bit, so if you don't have it filled enough, it'll have not enough space and you won't have enough room for sanding. Not. Okay, so first thing you do is you have your finished piece and you take well actually you need to get the material ready because this is only a 5 minutes of working time before it starts to get really gummy and hard to move around. So we're gonna do a little charcoal and eggshell today. So first you shave your material, whether it's charcoal or chalk. And with the black you only really need a little bit because it covers a lot of just to be safe. And with the eggshell, I'm going to add a little right now, but I think you can add as you go too, depending on how much you want. Okay, so then you get your 2 piles and you squeeze out 2 even-sized blobs of epoxy, and that's about as much as you think you'll need to fill the piece. So I'm just guesstimating here. That's about right. And then using a toothpick, you add the material in as you mix them. Because you don't have much time, so you kind of need to be doing it all at once. Let's move the paper and put it all together. And both piles need to be evenly mixed. Okay, and your toothpick. And when you're filling the piece, you want to fill the small areas first. And this piece is all kind of large, but if you need, you can use a saw blade to get into small cracks and crevices if you have a very small area. Just use the toothpick to scoop it up. You spread it across the area. Fill all the way.
Well,
just some demo. I didn't want to like use a ton of epoxy. And then if you want to add more colorant to the top of the layer, like some eggshell, like I like to add to so when you're sanding it'll have extra. And then keep stirring it around in there just so you get extra eggshell.
What if you want to blend colors?
You have to make all of your piles and have them ready to go and mix them all with the color. Use different toothpicks and add them in, because if you mix cross-contaminate the toothpick color, it will start to bleed into the other ones.
So yeah, you'll start out with all your little piles of powder and then just drag it over and mix it in.
And you can use either your fingers or some paper towel, and I would wipe off the excess off the edge while it's still wet, so it'll just save you time later, so you don't have to sand it.
What would happen if you just, let's say you left the black on there like that and it finished, it dried or whatever, and then you made another color or something to fill in like the rest of it? Can you do that with?
Yeah, you can do that. You might get a little hairline.
We can do it right now on here. we're gonna make some yellow with the chalk, and I can explain the difference between opaque and translucent. We'll do 2 mixes. And then this one I'll make it really opaque. See how when you add the colorant it gets darker, like this yellow chalk. When you draw with the chalk it's very light and not very bright, but then you add the colorant to the like the epoxy and it starts to get dark. So certain colors like purples and blues and cool colors that are darker will get a lot darker when you add the epoxy. So just show an example. And if we wanted to add to this piece now, we could put some yellow in here and then blend it around. And since this has already been a couple minutes, it's starting to get a little harder, so it's not running together. And if you wanted it to run together, you could pull it through like cake decorating, like make some nice stripes.
Or you can kind of chop into each other so it blends. So,
and like even though it's actually been it says 5-minute epoxy, it says 15 minutes on the back that you have of like working time, but where it's like a little tacky still, so you can. It would be ideal to add all your other colors if you're going to be blending within that 15-minute period. And then I can I'll show you just if you add a tiny bit of yellow to the pile, how like clear and translucent it gets. 2 little even blobs. Just going to get a little bit of yellow here. I'm going to use this toothpick. See, now you can, it's very mild. Just a little bit of hint of yellow. And then with that, see the difference, you can see the metal behind it. So if you want to pass that around, if you have a patina behind there, and also
if you're mixing glitter, a lot of us use glitter, you might want to have just a little bit of translucence so that you can see into it. I think it looks like starry skies.
And also, your solder will show the more translucent it is, so remember that before you add the epoxy, that you need to have it all cleaned up. If you look at this bracelet, there's some areas where if you look very closely, you can actually see the solder spills underneath the colors. So it's a good example also, of how you should clean your solder.
Or go all opaque.
So if you look at this one, it has, I would say, this is like about the height you want to fill it to, the level. Maybe a little higher. Even.
I would go a little higher.
I didn't have enough made originally, but just so you have room for sanding.
Yeah, it needs to be over your edge so that it'll be flush when you sand it. Otherwise you'll have a pocket and you'll never get it to look right.
Any questions?
If it dries and it's not high enough, can you add more?
Yeah, but you'll have a scar
and it
there.
Won't look, it's hard to get that exact, depending on what color you're using, it's hard to get that exact color again.
I think it's better to do too much than not enough. So,
Emily actually did hers already, and she had a nice high layer on there, and it sanded down really, really nicely. It looks really good.
Any other questions? Okay then. Good. Always clean up your mess. I clean up too many messes. People leave it behind. Okay.